Everyone celebrated their success, but no one remembered the man who made it possible. This is the story of David, the brother they forgot. Life often asks us to choose between our dreams and the people we love. For David, that choice came far too early under a gray sky. The weight of his parents' legacy now rested on his teenage shoulders. He knew his own future would have to wait while his siblings grew. He knelt down and looked into their eyes, promising them a life he wasn't sure he could provide. But love gave him an iron will. The years that followed were a blur of dust, sweat, and tireless labor. He worked while the sun burned and while the clouds wept. When the construction shifts ended, he found work elsewhere. Every penny was a brick in the foundation of his siblings' success. In the quiet of their cramped kitchen, he often went hungry so they could be full. To David, their survival was his only priority. He walked miles to the school registrar, handing over his hard-earned savings. Their education was the dream he had held for himself. Time moved forward, transforming his sacrifice into their triumph. One by one, they reached heights he had only ever imagined from the shadows. At a crowded graduation party, David stood apart. He was older now, his youth spent on their future, watching them celebrate their new lives. He didn't need the spotlight. Seeing them happy was supposed to be enough. But their worlds grew larger. His seemed to shrink. Months turned into years of silence. The siblings he raised were now too busy with their luxury and influence to remember the man who labored. In high-rise offices and five-star restaurants, his name was forgotten. Their phones rang, but their hands were too busy holding champagne and pens. David sat on his porch as the sun dipped below the horizon. The silence of the neighborhood was a cold reminder of his solitude. When he sought to build a family of his own, life delivered a final, cruel blow. The doctor's words were a sentence of permanent loneliness. He would never have a child of his own blood. He returned to a room that felt emptier than it ever had before. But the heart that knows how to sacrifice also knows how to find hope in the most unlikely of places, even on a gritty street. There, huddled against the cold brick, was a child who looked just as lost as David felt. A child abandoned by the world. David reached out, not with a question of where he belonged, but with a simple offering of kindness, a piece of bread and a smile. That night, David didn't walk home alone. He held a small, cold hand in his, and for the first time in years, his house felt like a home. He taught the boy not just to read, but to believe that he was worthy of a future. They studied by the soft glow of a single candle. David found his strength again. He worked once more, his old bones moving with purpose that betrayal had nearly stolen from him. Years passed, and the boy grew into a man who understood the value of the love he had been given, a love that required no blood ties. One afternoon, a tall, successful man walked into David's modest room. He didn't come from an inheritance, he came for his father. They stood together in front of a beautiful home, far from the pain of the past. Samuel had built a world for the man who saved him. In the end, David found that sacrifice is never truly lost. It returns in the hearts of those we choose to love. He sat by the window watching the garden bloom. His life was a long road, but it had finally led him to peace.